test rig upgrades at Massie's, OLM second level nears completion at Sanchez, another section of Starfactory framing almost ready at the build site, and final preparations of Pad A OLM for Flight 6 at the launch site. Hey everyone and welcome back, I'm Jeff A and we'll talk about that and more in today's episode 65 of our Starbase Flyover update, brought to you by RGV Aerial Photography. During this time, SpaceX crews have been super busy at all the sites across Starbase. These aerial photos were taken on the 8th of November. Let's take a look around, starting at the Massie's test facility. Before we dive in, let's have a quick look at Proky's labelled map to get you oriented. Beginning at the structural test stand, we can see the inner disc structure has been placed within the base ring. New work can be seen between each of the 20 piston flange mounts, however it is unclear if these are for the newer short pistons or something else. Sitting nearby, we can see the thrust simulation structure for the inner centre engines has additional pistons since last week. Near the nose cone jail, the testing cap has been lifted off the interface ring, which has received a fresh coat of paint. At the centre of the site, the new light pole appears to be complete. The booster 11 and hot stage ring area hasn't seen much activity, though the hot stage ring has been flipped over since last week. Looking closely, we can see many structural beams that have been damaged on impact. At the south end of the site, new vaporizers are stored near the flare stack. They are likely here as storage at other sites is limited these days. At the static fire trench, the test stand has been placed on its pedestals, possibly to test procedures with the new access platform. And with that, on to Sanchez. First, we'll get our bearings with his labelled map. As always, let's start at the big news site. The OLM upper deck now has 7 out of 8 sections in place, with the 8th section delivered on November 10th. A lot of welding is expected in the next few weeks as soon as this deck is fully assembled. After that work is finished, we should see the missing wall sections added to complete the main structure. Then, the top deck pancake should be the last thing to be installed. As you can see, stiffeners are ready to weld together and then lifted into place. Close by, more support frames for the flame deflector bucket are being built. Some water manifolds have appeared below this white tank. These pipes look to be the exact diameter needed for those manifolds. We'll keep an eye out on all of those items. Here's a post from Chrome Kiwi that might help you understand how the OLM will look when completed. Over by the highway, another white jig was moved into the factory. At the chopsticks area, reinforcement work is well underway given the fact that most of the additional hardware that was staged is no longer there. The next step of this work should be upgrades added to the newly cleaned sections, then white paint added to the reinforced sections, and finally the black paint. Rolling to the QD arm area, this big piece of hardware didn't get much attention. It is still missing the front side that will hold the ship QD. We'll also keep an eye out for this once we see the hardware delivered. Close to the QD arm, additional ground side piping is being fabricated. All of these pipes should go into the trenches at the launch site. Now moving over to what was a scrapyard, this area seems to be completely converted to the new crane yard. The pest dispenser that was moved here 2 weeks ago has just disappeared. The only thing left are the Starlink satellites that were inside of it. We'll have to wait and see if they build another PES loader for version 3 satellites in the not too distant future. At the rocket garden, SPMTs are underneath the B-13 transport stand. There were closures scheduled for November 11th through to the 14th, all of them being for transport from production site to the pad. So by the time you're watching this video, we might have a full stack already. Lastly, B-14.1 has been stripped of its testing hardware from its forward dome. We might see it scrapped very soon. Now, let's check out the build site. Well, it's as busy as ever as SpaceX readies Ship 31 for launch on Flight 6, while working on Block 2 ships and the Starfactory. Starting with Megabay 2, which is home to the first Block 2 ships, Ship 33 and 34. Behind the bay, the storm wall has been mostly poured with concrete and the drainage work is continuing. After its cryo campaign at Massie's, Ship 33 is being installed with Raptor engines. This lab Padre footage compiled by VIX shows SN305, a Raptor 2 engine famously hauled by the Cybertruck last year. 2 more vacuum engines were rolled into the bay, as well as sea-level engines with serial numbers in the 300s. Moving over to Megabay 1, it's currently hosted boosters 13, 14, 15 and 16 at the time of writing. Booster 16 was stacked once more last Wednesday to make it 16 rings tall out of 24. This footage from Lab Padre shows the hot staging ring being rolled for the crowning of Booster 13 ahead of Starship Flight 6. The current date for launch is no earlier than November 18th, more on that later. Moving on to the high bay, the last Block 1 ship, Ship 31, was being worked on during the time of the flyover. Its heat shield was exposed to Lab Padre's cameras on November 11th. This comparison by the space engineer of Ship 29 versus Ship 31 shows that SpaceX has elected to cut back Ship 31's heat shield to test its performance during re-entry, perhaps even to failure. It definitely seems like Starship's re-entry will be an exciting one. Starbase Surfer took this shot of a banana decal being painted. We can see the blue glue SpaceX is using for the flaps in order to reduce burn-through. The ship was rolled to the launch site on Monday, November 11th, possibly for the last time. Moving on to the Starfactory, check out this angled shot showing the extent of which roofing panels have been installed. Bridge crane rails can also be seen connecting to the already built segment. The office building's entrance skylight has been installed with glass. This atrium will likely serve as the welcome area for SpaceX employees, maybe with a Raptor or two on display. On the ground, this time-lapse by Sean Giesler shows the glass being installed at an angle on the connection between the office building and Starfactory. Black siding will likely extend all the way to meet that glass. Before moving on, a quick reminder that we have Patreon tiers available if you wish to support us and gain access to high-quality flyover galleries as well as round-table in-depth discussions the same day we fly. Onwards to the launch site. Let's take a look at this week's labelled map to get you familiar with the site. Beginning at Pad B, the trench again seems to be waiting on tieback installation to be completed before progressing forward. The commodities trench has seen great progress this week, with the first pipes being installed in the racks within the first built section of culvert. Along the southwest side of the trench, sheet piles have been cut off near the mini excavator in the trench toward the finished culvert. The mini excavator appears to be working along the remaining commodities trench. In the next couple of weeks, we may see the culvert continue toward the south. This week, we see further reductions of parts for the CC8800 as the slow process of hauling away these large components takes many trucks. Near the water-filled fluids bunker, we see 2 additional safety nets have been removed from the northeast facing side. 3 nets remain to be removed. The conduit installation continues near the existing comms bunker, with many already making connection to the building. Just past the D2 entrance, we now have a much better picture of this construction from the limited excavation seen last week. Throughout the week, additional concrete pours were observed as the rat slab was placed as the excavation continues towards the new fluids bunker. In the area first excavated, rebar cages are rising fast to form the underground culvert for propellant lines from the tank farm toward Pad B. The cage includes the base structure and both walls, as well as an end wall on the farm side. Concrete forms can be seen around the rebar. A lengthy concrete pour ensued early in the morning of November 11th, suggesting the base concrete of this segment was placed. Across the current path from the entrance, additional work continues at the end of the horizontal tanks. The second of the new subcoolers has been placed on its foundations. Additionally, many stands have been installed nearby for future pipework to be placed. Electrical conduit extend from the vault installed last week toward hardware to the south. The majority of these make a turn west, possibly to be extended along the culvert toward Pad B. The concrete piles seen a few weeks ago have now been unearthed. A small square pad next to the subcooler may be for a vaporizer, possibly one of them from the back of Massie's. A pair of rectangular footings are to the south, with a spacing likely for the third subcooler located at Sanchez. Hopping across the conduit trench is a larger rectangle for future hardware. Near the front of the last LOX tank, the open foundation from last week has been completed, with a steel embed ring placed for what is expected to be one of the vertical tanks delivered to the port of Brownsville. Now sliding down the tank farm, an unexpected turn of events is the removal of the interior concrete wall in front of the small methane tanks. With the shorter containment wall around the tanks and the taller wall at the highway, it seems this wall is no longer needed. We'll have to wait and see if the clearing is making way for new hardware in this area. At the end of the pipe stands, the speculated path of liquid nitrogen pipework mentioned last week has been completed, bringing the LOX side of the tank farm back to operation after being disconnected for this upgrade. Nearby, the 12 pipe stands staged last week are now in place with windscreens assembled while welders secure them to the embeds in the foundations. Over at Pad A, final preparations appear to be underway for Flight 6, as November 6th would see the first NOTAM publication indicating a no earlier launch date of November 18th. Later that day, SpaceX would further confirm this with the release of a Flight 5 recap video and updates to their website. Now, to briefly highlight the changes, Booster 13 is expected to follow a nearly identical sequence as Booster 12, with some minor adjustments to the flight timings as well as hardware updates to the vehicle to address issues from Flight 5. Ship 31 will once again make a soft landing attempt in the Indian Ocean. On its way there, a one-engine in-space relight of a Raptor is planned for this test to demonstrate Starship's capability of successfully deorbiting on future orbital tests. Additional tests are also planned for the heat shield, with removal of tiles from the flanks of the ship as mentioned previously. This objective is now confirmed to be a study of locations for future catch-enabling hardware. They also plan a slightly different flight profile with a higher angle of attack in the final phase of descent to purposely stress the capabilities of the flaps to gain additional data regarding flight profile tuning in the future. As we return to the launch site, some remaining refurbishment is in progress. To the south of the OLM, additional plates are staged to be installed over the vent assembly shown last week. Looking at the BQD hood, we can see that some welding has been done to the edge near the front door. As mentioned already, transport closures have been posted for November 11th, 13th and 14th for vehicle movements to the launch site. In an unusual sequence, the first closure would be for Ship 31 to make its way to the launch site and park to the west of Tower 1 ahead of Booster 13. With two additional primary closures, it remains to be seen what may be moved in addition to Booster 13. As Ship 31 made its way to the launch site, the inner scaffolding on the dance floor was seen being removed in preparation for Booster 13 to make a rapid lift to the OLM, with the earliest launch date less than a week away. And that's it for episode 65 of Starbase Flyover Update. I'm sure you all agree it's been an amazing week at Starbase with plenty more to come. Thank you for choosing to fly with RGV aerial photography, and I hope you all enjoyed the flight. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on further updates as they progress further towards completion of Orbital Pad B. Please consider joining our Patreon to get early access to flyover galleries as well as participate in our show and tell discussions. I'm Jeff A, and we'll see you soon for another update on all the things that are happening at Starbase Texas from 10,500 feet.